to aid in crisis intervention, things like assisted outpatient treatment centers. As I said, 16 states have red flag laws. Texas does not. And they certainly shouldn't miss out on access to those resources for crisis intervention. But one of the things you hear people concerned with most when it comes to these red flag laws, where people who are found after an adjudication to be a danger to themselves and others can lose access to their firearms on a temporary basis. It's absolutely critical that each and every one of those includes protection that comes from due process of law, and particularly when it comes to the rights of law-abiding gun owners. Our framework also includes protections for victims of domestic violence. It shouldn't matter whether the victim is married to their abuser. If the abuser is convicted of domestic violence, they should not be able to purchase a firearm. Our proposal also cracks down on illegal sellers and manufacturers of firearms, like the man who sold a gun to the shooter who killed 7 people and injured 25 others in Midland and Odessa out in West Texas. The shooter knew he couldn't pass a traditional background test, so he traveled to Lubbock, Texas, and purchased a firearm from somebody who made knockoff AR-15s out of parts that he purchased over the internet. And of course, no background check was done, and tragedy ensued. Our provisions also include a review of juvenile records for buyers under the age of 21. In Uvalde, Salvador Ramos was able to pass a background check only because no one had any insight, official insight, into his tortured background. I've said before, he was a ticking time bomb, somebody who mutilated himself, threatened assaults, including sexual assaults against his fellow students. Somebody who posted pictures online of the weapons that he bought and threatened online to go shoot up a school. We need to know, before somebody walks in and buys a firearm when they turn 18, what their mental health and criminal record history looks like, to the extent feasible. And then we need to incentivize more states like the state of South Carolina and Virginia that currently upload mental health adjudications even for juveniles. To be clear, we agreed on a press statement, a set of principles. That was very important and hard fought. But now comes the even more difficult task of trying to agree on legislative text to actually implement those principles. And that's what we're working on this week. My hope is that we can complete that job in the next few days, hopefully by the end of the week, so that the bill will be available for all senators, indeed all the world, to read. And then Senator Schumer will have that available, should he choose to do so, to put it on the floor of the Senate next week. There's been a lot of talk and speculation in the press about what was included in the bill. And I'm pleased to say that I believe the principles that we came up with will save lives. To me, that's the ultimate goal, just like the legislation we passed in 2018 to fix the background check system after Sutherland Springs. I believe the principles we've articulated, if carried out in legislative text, which I expect them to be, will save lives. That's our goal. But we also understand we are operating here in the Senate with a 60-vote threshold, that 59 votes won't get it, and any lesser number will not allow us to vote off to close debate and then to pass a bill. And so I want to just talk about ideas that were left out of this deal because we knew they would jeopardize our ability to get to 60 votes. There was a lot of desire on both sides to include additional things, but They were excluded in large part because of our necessity of getting to 60 votes in order to get a bill. For example, proposals on universal background checks, assault weapon bans for 18 to 21-year-olds, mandatory waiting periods, 21-day waiting period for purchases of all firearms for 18 to 21-year-olds, high-capacity magazine bans, unconstitutional mandatory safe storage requirements of all firearms in homes, licensing requirements for purchasing an assault weapon, criminal penalties for negligent storage of firearms in home, and low mens rea, that's a criminal state of mind, standard for straw purchasing and trafficking firearms. All of these had been proposed by either President Biden or many of our Democratic colleagues and were not included in the statement of principles that was agreed to by 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats. We knew including any of these components would jeopardize our ability to get a deal. And so anytime our Democratic colleagues tried to push the envelope as far as they could, we had to remind them of that requirement and push back. Again, my view, my red line, my starting point, my premise in all of this is law-abiding gun owners are not the problem. Law-abiding gun owners who've passed a background check have a Second Amendment right to purchase a firearm. And no limitation on their rights is going to prevent shootings like Uvalde or Sandy Hook or Sutherland Springs. So focusing on the problem, which are keeping criminals and people with mental health problems from purchasing firearms under existing law, I believe is the right formula to build consensus and get a bill on the President's desk. We're still working, as I said, through a lot of the details, but I'm encouraged about where things stand right now. As I've said, my goal all along is the art of the possible. That's what politics is. It's the art of the possible. It's not everything I want and nothing you want, or everything you want and nothing I want. That's how not to get a deal. That's how not to accomplish anything. I'm hoping that 10 Republicans supporting the bill is not a ceiling, but is the floor. And we intend to continue to work with our colleagues to help them understand these principles that we've agreed to, the 20 of us, and to write legislative text that can earn broad bipartisan support, maybe supermajority support here in the United States Senate. I want to personally thank our colleagues, Senator Murphy, Senator Sinema, and Senator Tillis, for working in good faith to get us to this point, as well as a number of other senators who contributed to this bipartisan proposal. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. I think in many ways this is the beginning, not the middle or the end of our work, because now we need to put these principles into legislative text, and then we need to get it on the Senate floor, get it passed in the House, and then get it to President Biden's desk. I'll be sharing further updates with my colleagues in the Republican conference this week, and I hope working together with Senator Tillis and others to build additional support on our side of the aisle. Madam President, I just want to close on one final note. The bipartisan work that we've done here in the Senate on this school safety, mental health, and gun safety bill is a sharp contrast from what is happening on the other side of the Capitol. House Democrats, unfortunately, have a history of prioritizing politics over policy, but now their games have reached a dangerous low. I'm talking about the safety and security of the members of the United States Supreme Court and their family. It's been more than a month since the Senate passed bipartisan legislation to protect them from threats of violence. The legislation Senator Coons, a senator from Delaware, and I introduced, a bipartisan bill, passed the Senate unanimously. You think that happens every day? not by a long shot. To get all 100 senators to support a piece of legislation means it's really not controversial. But unfortunately, once it went to the House, it sat there and languished for a month, even as members of the Supreme Court and their families are being threatened. The House hasn't allowed a vote on that bipartisan bill. The reason given by our Democratic colleagues in the House is, well, they want to extend further protection to court employees and their families. That could include round-the-clock security details for everyone from clerks to IT staff and their spouses, children, siblings, and parents. That makes a mockery of what Senator Coons and I tried to do. All we wanted to do is give the police at the Supreme Court the very same authority that Capitol Police has to provide protective details to members of Congress. In fact, the leadership in both houses have permanent details assigned to them. But if a member of Congress receives a credible threat, Capitol Police will provide a protective detail for them. That's all we want to do for the members of the Supreme Court and their family. Last week, we received a terrifying reminder of the failure to act and what the consequences of that might be. U.S. Marshals arrested a man outside of Justice Kavanaugh's home who had traveled all the way from California to assassinate a sitting justice in the United States Supreme Court. When he was arrested, he had a Glock 17 semi-automatic pistol. He had ammunition, a knife, a crowbar, and some zip ties. He told authorities his plan was to break into Justice Kavanaugh's house, kill Justice Kavanaugh, and then commit suicide. That was his plan. Thank goodness law enforcement authorities were able to stop him. But this close call immediately set off calls for the House to pass the bipartisan legislation that I was discussing a moment ago. Again, that passed unanimously in the Senate a month ago. But unfortunately, House Democrats have still refused to do that. They still claim that the law clerks and other Supreme Court staff who are virtually anonymous to the public are in dire need of protection too. I think this is pretty transparently a stalling tactic. It's a pretty lame excuse for not providing the Supreme Court justices and their families the very same protection that Capitol Police provide members of Congress. Well, our bill was the bill that the Democratic House members say they want to pass instead was introduced on May the 10th, almost 5 weeks ago. But they haven't even voted on that bill yet. Again, this is a transparent attempt to stall the legislation that passed here 100-0. If they actually believed, if House Democrats actually believed in the snake oil that they're trying to sell, they would have passed their own bill a month ago. But they didn't, and they haven't. They've wasted precious time and left justices' families vulnerable to grave danger. If House Democrats want to vote on a bill that extends protection to other people, including the leaker of the Supreme Court opinion, they're welcome to try to do so. But first, they need to pass the bipartisan bill Senator Coons and I introduced. The line between legitimate public discourse and acts of violence has been crossed, and House Democrats cannot continue to turn a blind eye. We don't have time to spare when it comes to protecting the members of the court and their families. If, heaven forbid, something were to happen because of a lack of authority that would be conferred by the Supreme Court Police Parity Act, shame on members of the House of Representatives. It would be on them for their failure to act on this common-sense bipartisan bill. So, Madam President, the House needs to pass the Supreme Court Police Parity Act today. And if not today, tomorrow. I yield the floor.
Senator from Iowa. President.